Font. Good morning. It is now. The 27th. And I'm assembling executive function here at the Mystery Font in Minneapolis, Minnesota. The nexus of the imagination of democracy here at the Mystery Font is overcome with hokum and layers of screens, of two-dimensional memory fields that are cascading and layering through one another, contacting directly through the bandwidth of meaning and becoming rather a permuting hokum. It's just that unlike in the world, here at the Mystery Font, they are visible rather than simply perceptible within our inner proprioception-like sense of our collective bandwidth of meaning. We are experiencing massive distortions in the field of reality. And Scoop Troop, that's right. Have your Darbo cards handy to slap up over the windshield or your safety mask. It is deny, attack, reverse victim and offender that is used by predators. Someone seeking to evade will baselessly attack, deny, attack, to disturb and undermine credibility of someone, to reverse victim and offender, Darbo. It is useful, though, to know that sometimes it's good to just at least mentally hold that up, so to speak, to be aware when you know you are talking to a false monger. A Scoop Troop? Good gray. Good gray. What are we seeing? Oh yes. Oh yes, this being, this fleeting seeing, this careening, this breathing. What are we seeing? There is, aha. This is ascending, apparently. One of Musk's projectiles. Aha, and Trump and Pence are watching together this unfolding liftoff. I won't pick the big nose. I won't pick the big nose. I won't pick the big nose. Actually, the big no can be useful to pick. And sometimes there are multiples. We'll see. It's strange how things get toxified and permuted. After all, in the world, we are encouraged to go for what we desire and to pursue happiness, to pursue individualism, and yet asking for it is considered a punishment. And how did those words become punishment? It definitely sounds like a bad relationship. Asking for it should be a good thing. Asking to be part of invitations we're experiencing or to foster community by inviting others or inspiring projects, languages. Healthy community. How do we foster flourishing? I think we perceive when it rears its head. We perceive and prehend and apprehend fascism. We help people who are infected by intolerance and the idea that crushing some heads and filling up some mass graves solves something. We need to help people who are infected by that kind of anti-human malice. And I think this is the time to help those afflicted by a fever for Project 2020 to healthcare and to essentially deprogramming from extremist, toxic, non-Christian perversion of Christianity under the banner of Christian nationalism, to build theocracy under massive, toxic punishment. And a rule that is patriarchal terrorism, white supremacist patriarchal terrorism. That is what Project 2025 is bringing. From just a bit more reading and listening done today, Project 2025 is damage. It is coming to create concentration camps and mass slaughter. And we have to prehend and address and confront peacefully those who are fostering this Nazi apocalyptic crushing of democracy for a never-ending theocracy. We're doing something here. We're fostering the next flourishing stages of the ongoing project of American democracy. We are not throwing this away so that a few circle-jerking billionaires can serve the last of clean air. We are going to save what we can of our safety within this habitat. We're going to foster stewardship, and that involves with one another too. We're part of the habitat. we are a human family. We need to actually come together to have real tolerance, because toxically terrorizing and murdering to ascribe a non-scientific, arbitrary binary, for instance, upon people, or to say that people who are gay are in some way deficient or wrong, to say that people who are on the autism spectrum are wrong, to say that people who don't look like cis white men are somehow less. We're looking at abject Jeffrey Dahmer patriarchal terrorism and white supremacist terror. It is crime. It is the worst crime in human history rearing its head, and we need to help these people panicking that accountability means some kind of apocalypse. No. Processing that we didn't need to do poison wool blankets, my ancestors didn't need to poison wool blankets anybody, or sow genocide as we did, or as the majority of my ancestry did, or whatever. But the crime scene, the countrywide crime scene that we're in, that has not really been processed, and our apartheid here. Why would we obey and listen to people telling us to submit and go to sleep and not be woke? Like Hadi Ledbetter was talking about being aware. And that's for one's own safety. It also flourishes as being aware enough of one another to treat thy neighbor like thyself. That we have enough knowledge and awareness and ability to be kind that we can not be forces of evil and terror. And we all deserve space and ways to flourish and pursue happiness. We're being coaxed and hoaxed into the idea that there's not enough for everybody and that there's not enough to go around. But things being thieved from the middle class and thieved from essentially the large mass of society with ballooning superhero, supervillain paychecks. People making in an hour what some people make in a year. It doesn't show care at all for human family. And it doesn't show people paying their way. I think looking at fraud and being fleeced it's been vaunted that we pay our way, and people who are dealing with situations of low income or who have challenges and need help or lean on others and don't do visible work, whether it's being a caregiver or a parent, in ways that people denigrate or don't call effort or work or labor, and should. And that I don't think anybody's lazy. I think the only thing on earth that's lazy is a slave master, or someone who would try to cover those tracks to profit from those crimes. And those are crimes without statute of limitations, as it should be. We're strong enough to deal with what happened before. We're strong enough to look at it in the face. I can still appreciate my grandparents if I learn difficult truths about their lives. I can still love myself if I know mistakes that I've made. I can still respect artists for work that they do not liking every bowl of soup they've made or every statement they've made to the press. What are we trying to actually build here? Because the idea that we need to fend off an attack, that in and of itself, we need to seriously consider legitimately prosecuting people associated with Project 2025 immediately. That to charge people with insurrection now is wise, potentially, or with sedition, with terrorism. Because this is rather like getting a message from Donald Trump that says, I'm grabbing your pussy next month. It's a threat, and it's a promise. It's a promise of an attack. It's Bizarro Babe Ruth, or Babe Ruth, I don't know, saying, I'm going for your left thigh, kiddo. We have to wake up. Listen to who it is saying woke is bad. And listen to all of the trash that they throw at what we know woke is about awareness and kindness. And basic responsibility as part of neighborhood. It's ridiculous to allow bigots and neo-Nazis and cowards to trash and litter upon loving thy neighbor as thou doth love thyself, dost love thyself. Love your neighbor as yourself, as you love yourself. There are different versions of it, and Jesus was not the only person to say something like this. But that's not weakness. That's part of paying your way. And making sure we don't poison food by homogenizing production and letting monopolies exist. That we don't take people out of the equation where oversight is necessary and helpful, where it's helpful to have people's attention. To take care as we look at massive levels of new automation and automation. If that makes sense. We know that change will in many ways continue to accelerate. And so we need to protect and accept people really in positions of power only fostering, creating our new ongoing substrate. We don't say, oh, well, we won't be able to foster, we're not going to be able to afford the drinking water if only there were money enough. I mean, there's the water and there's the field, but we won't be able to eat anymore. Sorry, we don't have the money to. We need to look at resource and the way that the wealthiest actually contribute. Like, there are levels that you reach. We don't allow supervillain. We don't allow it. It's not a thing. We don't need superheroes to not have supervillains. We have to be, all of us, conscious, conscient, scient, aware people in some sense, and dial into one or two news sources outside of our favorite pop star and or politician and or thief, who could all be the same person or not. I think it's our duty, all of us, to inspect our heroes and who we trust. And I say fairly and frankly, this is an election about continuing democratic elections. We are voting to continue democracy, or we submit to a murderer who broke his oath of office and crushed the watch that he was supposed to hold, like his duty to be the one presiding. I ask for the watch. I'll stand on the wall, or I will have someone up there. I'll have the soldiers watch. I'll have the intelligence tell me. And this intelligence, I'll know how to tell people. This is what we do, and I'll know how to tell you so you don't panic. I won't say I don't want to create a panic as an excuse for inaction, because that's fucking insane. But that's what Cutie Pie did. We can't accept that. He let COVID hit us. In multiple ways, he fostered its coming, but he let it hit us. He let it kill people. Donald Trump and Stephen Miller. And by the way, Donald Trump, Roger Stone, and Stephen Miller remain at large. We are now at the time when we need to apprehend Project 2025. These are seditioners, hoodwinked or maliciously looking to hoodwink. And they are here to attack and destroy America. All of this bullshit about a foggy deep state is part of their Nazi ruse. And the new Colossus must be woke, or we will be devoured. We do not need to be put into a machine. It's time to wake up. It's time to wake up. Why? Because we like you. World. Gray array. The assembled sentience of all humanity, of all human beings alive, and all mindness across time and space that has lived on this planet. And where else do we trace? Is the bandwidth of thought elsewhere? And do these husks see it in ways? Are we connected across the vacuum of space? How vast is sentience in the fields of morphic resonance? How vast are they? How vast are we? Or of what distance and meter or density or theater are we apart and free to be? Sound. This. That it seems we come upon a scene here where Donald Trump and Mike Pence are watching a ship of Musk's take off, but there's an overcast of a menacing hokum cloud or something. It's difficult to tell, and this is showing up in the space a bit, but it's also applying within the architecture of this streaming feature here so that I can tell that you can see this. And I'm not sure of the relation in terms of exactly how distinct in space, if at all, these layers, clearly distinct layers, may be. It doesn't usually show up this way. This is new. I'm not entirely sure it's visible in here, but when I'm looking directly ahead to my view of the screen as I think you see it, I'm also seeing it and sensing it about, but the minute I look away, it's clear. So this is new. But, oh, that's what this place is. That's right. Yes, this is the mystery font. I'm assembling executive function. That's right. That's right. Yes, 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 yes! I'm having an episode. Hello, I'm Tim Cameron. This is an episode of Mystery Font 42, Ope Intuit. Good gray. Good gray. Good gray. Good gray. Fleecing. Fraud. Fleecing fraud. So we see this ship of a threat leveled by neo-Nazis banding together to sow white supremacist patriarchal terrorism and create mass murder and deportations and destabilize millions of lives and create trauma that echoes through generations. Stephen Miller is sowing an apocalypse. And we need to say no. And it needs to be boundaries of steel, handled with gentle care, now. Yeah, I think that's what we're talking about. And so, the gracious play this. The grace displaces. None such. Thus it must overly dispose, combust, conduct. The other, another must. Relay this gray array, its omnibus, contain contagion, came to play thus. Be nature your creation would create. Don't fleece us. We wax from wane, radio, science, brain. This is the germane braid synaptically liaised. It's always been this maze, imagination aid. At war with walls and mazes, we go through scient sentience, scient phases. We create new whole phrases, innovate, renovate, chaos. It's come to play, just be nature that plays with us. Creature, your creature would create. It makes everyone up to date. It's updating today. It updates regularly. It's recommended to you regularly, and this makes it now. New date. Updated again, it's becoming all wending. It's bending this rendering. It's not an end, but towards an end. Fair, send. Gracious, gracious me. Ah, yes. Ah, yes. Here we are. Because we see it is a pool of hokum. There is a hokum field, a curious display of locks and reels and distributions. Do you remember what it was like when the first boundary violations relative to the 2016 election started happening? When he started saying shocking things when it was too late to say no without someone having to really embarrass him? Like, why would you say that now? This is really a betrayal. And like shaking someone's hand and yanking it. But when they're crossing a dangerous bridge, he sets traps. We are dealing with the falsehood. We are dealing with the fuck your fleecing fraud. The fleecing fraud to whom I would like to recommend that we say fuck your fleecing. We do not deserve such abject betrayal. We are Americans and the guests of America. We are human beings. We are as noble as anyone on earth. And anyone on earth is as noble as us. And yes, we do have different responsibilities to some degree, but goodness knows that someone across the border is a human being in every measure as we are. It is toxic. It is criminal and antichrist-like. To allow devastation of empathy. It is fascistic. And in protecting ourselves from Project 2025, we need to be aware that people who abuse empathy are sowing fascism. The Milgram experiment showed us that we need to take care. We need to take care of one another. We need to be aware of how we can be manipulated. It is an issue of duty to human family and to ourselves in this country to take care that we are fostering a sustainable future. This flawed and beautiful country, with all of the mistakes and crimes, can update and refresh by beginning as part of our codec the processing of our apartheid. That without shame, we can find out about how we do not erase the past. How we do when we realize we're celebrating people who we come to realize need not be celebrated, but we need to remember the history of what does that look like. And it probably does mean removing statues or placing them in cages that would look like where Stephen Miller puts children. It would mean new context because, for instance, the multiple statues that were put up to the Confederacy, that were so many of them put up in the 20th century by the Ku Klux Klan and supporters of the Klan, those were threats. Those were part of terrorism against black people, against everyone who wasn't white. And we're not having the conversation about whether it's the Confederacy that we're dealing with here. It is the bandwidth of the Ku Klux Klan, Confederacy, MAGA, neo-Nazi, white supremacist, patriarchal, terrorist movement. It is the same intolerant cancer at its essence. We're talking about intolerance. And a country as good as America doesn't need to be great in the way where there are slaughters that we accept or say are just. That's apocalypse. It's also crime. It's not living within our means. It's not honorable. And it's in basing one small segment of society's harsh, particular, arbitrary view of a translation of the Bible and saying we're suddenly going to break the tent poles and their separation How does that work? This test, test, test. Yeah. Well, sound issue. Interesting. I'm going to deal with resolving a tech issue here. And we shall return. Well, here we are in this hanging hokum, this fraudulent falsehood, this hokum, and a golden fleece wafting atop the head, wearing a falsehood. Who is that? Who has donned the falsehood? Indeed. Who is this pernicious, peculiar falsehood? Who is the falsehood? And why won't they stop vomiting hokum